Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, I'm Parmveer Kang, and this is your 3 o'clock news and sports update on 1680 The Crow. Melanie Mark is stepping down as MLA for Vancouver Mount Pleasant, she announced in the legislature this afternoon. The two-time cabinet minister, who resigned from cabinet and took a medical leave in September, cited personal and systemic reasons in her decision to leave provincial politics on Wednesday. The resignation sets up a second by-election for BC in 2023. Draft documents from the City of Vancouver show councillors are considering a nearly 10% property tax increase for 2023. The draft is built on an operating budget of just under $2 billion. It includes a proposed property tax hike of 9.7%, almost double the increase floated by Council in November. The budget will be considered at a special council meeting at Vancouver City Hall next Tuesday, with a final decision expected next month. The proposal comes as residents in Surrey face a property tax increase of roughly 17%. BCIT celebrated its 10th Pink Shirt Day this year. David Nava has more.
Pink Shirt Day is an initiative inspired after a couple of teenagers in Nova Scotia that bought and handed out hundreds of pink shirts to stop the bullying towards a boy wearing a pink shirt. Wendy McLeod, coordinator of the Respect, Diversity and Inclusion Office at BCIT, followed their lead and started the recognition of the day at BCIT. McLeod shares her feelings after seeing the initiative becoming an institution-wide event.
It makes me feel good to help people, and I've been doing that for years, so it's one of those things that are near and dear to my heart and makes me feel that we are creating a great community here at BCIT.
Apart from the events held across different departments at BCIT, this year's Pink Shirt Group photo gathered hundreds of students and staff, including interim BCIT President Paul McCullough. David Nava, 1680 The Crow.
Reporter David Nava joins us now. David, what kinds of events were celebrated today?
Hey, Farmer. Well, the Recreation Center hosted a gathering where they handed out free coffee, hot chocolate, and tea to encourage students to chat about their feelings and write nice thoughts on their chalkboard of kindness. The library and the International Student Center held thought bubbles where students shared their opinions on how to improve relationships at school.
And what types of messages were shared on the wall behind you?
Well, right now I'm outside of the student office, student life office, and yeah, there is plenty of nice notes of something like too blessed to be stressed. You get great care, and well, definitely a lot of great vibes here.
Thank you, David. The BC Green Party says disability rates in this province are shamefully low, and it's calling on the new Democrat government to raise them. A statement from BC Green leader Sonia Furstenham says it's time for the government to step up and support some of BC's most vulnerable people. She says the rate for a single disabled person in BC is roughly $16,000, but the federal poverty rate for a single person is set at $26,000, and Ottawa has asked the provinces to fill the gap until a federal benefit comes through. The BC Green Party says 140,000 British Columbians need help, and it's calling on Premier David Eby to boost disability assistance rates to $2,200 a month until federal benefits begin in the next year. Stanley Park's Vancouver Aquarium is the new permanent home of 2 rescue harbor seals. Evan Tate has more.
The seals, named Skeen and Pim, moved into the aquarium less than a week ago. They're still getting used to each other in their tank and have not yet interacted with the older marine mammals. They will get to when they're older, though, as the DFO deemed them unsafe to return to the ocean. Nadine Trottier, a marine mammal trainer at the Vancouver Aquarium, explains why it is unsafe for them to go back into the ocean.
They are both almost fully blind, so this is why they were deemed unreleasable by the government, and they are now here in their forever home.
The seals were rescued about a month apart in late 2022. Skeena can be easily recognized as her left eye has been surgically removed. Evan Tate, 1680, The Crow.
A local runner is having a positive impact on the Vancouver running community by picking up trash. Reporter Victor Gaucher has more.
Vancouver ultramarathon runner David Papineau has now picked up over 50,000 discarded masks while running throughout Vancouver. This hobby is supported by the running community, who admire his dedication to helping keep Vancouver green.
Admiration. We love our city. It's a beautiful part of the country. We love our country. But to see litter on the streets is never good. And so he just makes it a bit nicer, right?
For almost 2 years now, Papineau has been running and collecting masks to be disposed of properly. He says he won't stop until there are no masks left. Victor Gaucher, 1680, The Crow.
This year, Pink Shirt Day brings a new initiative to Kamloops. Reporter Kyle Collins explains.
The Kamloops RCMP Crime Prevention Team has now officially launched a program called Safe Places to promote safety for the 2S LGBTQ PIA+ community. Local schools and businesses who take part in the initiative will display a Rainbow Shield sticker or decal outside their building. Then, if a person is experiencing hate, businesses or offices with the Rainbow Shield are seen as selected safe spaces someone can wait for the police to arrive without any judgment. The initiative begins today on Pink Shirt Day as the Rainbow Shield captures the true meaning of anti-bullying, which is kindness, empathy, and understanding. Kyle Collis, 1680, The Crow.
An illegal drug seizure in Surrey led RCMP to discover thousands of potentially lethal doses of fentanyl. Reporter Aaliyah Andres has more.
Surrey RCMP were called to a business front in downtown Cloverdale after suspicions of drug trafficking could be taking place. 4 suspects were arrested and multiple large doses of illicit drugs were seized, including approximately 8,000 doses of potentially lethal fentanyl. Constable Sarbjeet Sangha says although the investigation is still open, it's a relief to have prevented these drugs from getting onto the streets.
We are very happy that this investigation led us to seize all these drugs that could have been on our street. Our investigations are ongoing to put in the report to Crown Counsel, and we'll be recommending charges, and we can provide an update at that time when the file is resumed.
Aaliyah Andres, 1680, The Crow.
A man from Chilliwack has turned himself in after footage surfaced of him making homophobic remarks and harassing 2 men outside of the SkyTrain Saturday night. Anthony Atinsov has more on the story.
A resident from Chilliwack was arrested on Thursday morning after being involved in a hate incident that occurred outside of the Burrard SkyTrain station. A video posted on social media depicted the 34-year-old man making homophobic remarks and verbally harassing 2 men. This raises a debate on the utility of social media, and Sergeant Steve Addison sees it as a productive method of self-reporting crime.
The alleged suspect's own words, the alleged suspect's own actions, his own image recorded on video, that's the most powerful evidence that we can get. The fact that we were able to make such a quick arrest in this is a result of the video that was taken and posted and the response that it got.
The suspect was later released, and the RCMP will be continuing their investigation and preparing a report to the Crown Counsel. His court appearance will be on March 29th. This is Anthony Atanisov with 1680 The Crow.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump visited East Palestine, Ohio, where a train carrying toxic chemicals was derailed. Derek Dennis of ABC News has the story.
On the ground near the site of the toxic train derailment, former president and presidential candidate again, Donald Trump, with a familiar phrase.
We've been getting our news from the real news and from the fake news.
Critics say Trump is playing politics with the disaster, noting his administration made defunding transportation and rolling back environmental regulations a priority. Trump himself limiting his criticism of his successor, President Biden, and FEMA for their derailment response.
They could have been 2 weeks earlier, or at least a week earlier. I guess it came from the top.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg visits Thursday. Derek Dennis, ABC News.
Now on to weather, as snowfall warnings are now in effect for eastern Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast as winter storm brings snow and frigid temperatures to much of the province. Metro Vancouver and the entire South Coast aren't immediately affected by snowfall warnings. I'm Parmveer Kang and we'll be back with sports.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Welcome back to 1680 The Crow. Moving on to sports, the Vancouver Canucks are set to face the St. Louis Blues on the road tomorrow night. Last night, Vancouver picked up a single point in their shootout loss to the Nashville Predators. The team was down 4-2 late in the game but tied it thanks to goals from Connor Garland and Andrei Kuzmenko. Defenseman Quinn Hughes acknowledged the team's faith in themselves even when losing late.
I mean, I think we've seen that all year from us. We don't quit. Exciting to bring ourselves back in the game, though. 2 goals with a minute and a half left. Just shows, character, but also how guys, want to win and are competitive and aren't just going to lay down.
The Blues sit just 6 points ahead of Vancouver as both look to fight their way into the playoffs late in the season. The NHL Seattle Kraken have partnered with the Muckleshoot Indian tribe to put its logo on their jerseys and help increase Indigenous youth participation in Washington state. They're the first team in the major 4 North American professional sports leagues to feature a Native American tribe unrelated to a casino on their jerseys. The multi-year agreement also involves the construction of a sports court on the Muckleshoot Reservation, more Indigenous art at Climate Pledge Arena, and the creation of hockey programs for Indigenous youth in the area. Alex Ovechkin has returned to the Washington Capitals after missing the past week for the death of his father in Moscow. Ovechkin practiced to get some of his conditioning back after flying to and from Russia and only skating once during his absence. He's eager to get back on the ice while he and his family are still mourning Mikhail Ovechkin's death at age 71. Washington's longtime captain and leading scorer could play as soon as Thursday against Anaheim. The Capitals went 0-4 without Ovechkin and have lost 5 in a row in regulation for the first time in 9 years. Moving on to basketball now, as the NBA is back from its All-Star break tomorrow night. With 9 scheduled matchups, it will be a jammed-packed night of action headlined by the Memphis Grizzlies visiting the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers hosting the Golden State Warriors. The Toronto Raptors will also be in action as they host the New Orleans Pelicans. Both teams are still fighting for playoff spots in their respective conferences as they are both currently in the play-in picture. Post-All-Star break, both teams are missing key pieces as Pelican star Zion Williamson is still out with a hamstring injury, while Raptors forward OG Anunoby is out with a wrist injury. Raptor star Pascal Siakam participated in his second All-Star game, and the ratings for this year's games dropped significantly from past seasons. The ratings declined by 29% and viewership by 27% from last year's game. While both ratings and viewership dropping has been a trend for All-Star games, this drop is the steepest since 2000. These numbers echo the same sentiment that many players and coaches who were part of the game shared in their post-game interviews. Newly acquired Miami Heat forward Kevin Love says he's looking forward to playing alongside his new teammate Bam Adebayo.
I actually have, his jersey. I know there's a picture of us exchanging it, but he's one of those guys. I just love his game. I love what he's about. I love how he impacts winning.
That's all for your 3 o'clock sports update. I'm Parmveer Kang for 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow. Now it's time for the comment.
As most movie streamers would know, today is officially the first day that Netflix users are being banned from sharing their account passwords with friends and family. This policy requires users to choose a primary location for their account, which effectively bans others from using the same account from a different IP address. Users who try to access the account from a different location will be charged $7.99 Canadian dollars per person each month. According to Netflix, more than 100 million households are sharing accounts, which apparently impacts its ability to make enough money to invest in new TV and films. This seems to be a clear money grab from Netflix, and although it's understandable that they'd want to make more money, it just doesn't make sense to implement this almost 26 years after the company was founded. It seems the showrunners at the company think that it has a deep enough grasp on us at this point, so it's safe to raise the stakes without significantly damaging their subscription numbers. There are now several petitions on the internet opposing this policy. A petition posted on February 8th that opposes the new guidelines has accumulated almost 58,000 signatures to date. According to Netflix, it will continue to crack down on passcode sharing to different countries throughout 2023. But will they follow through with their plan if the public outcry is strong enough? Carissa Cheng, 1680 The Crow.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
Welcome, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Crow Chronicles. I'm John Park.
And I'm Riley Lung.
In today's episode, we will talk about the impact of BC Hydro's Site C project. This is a massive one.
Well, to start off, a little backstory. The Site C project is a massive dam that will flood the Peace River Valley. That's all the way up in northern BC. Construction started in the summer of 2015, and as of 2022, it has costed taxpayers, well over $16 billion so far. And that's $9 billion over the original amount.
Man, imagine all, the maple syrup that you can buy, or,
Okay, we don't always drink maple syrup, okay? Maybe once in a while for
Well, I do
Canadians.
enjoy it, so...
Oh, well, whatever. Well, when it began, BC Hydro has faced many protests over the years, all over BC, especially at the Site C site. Obviously. Especially back in 2019 when the West Morbilly First Nations renewed the lawsuit against BC Hydro. And I'm sure many people have seen protesters all over. And the West Morbilly is basically the main nation being affected by Site C Dam, especially since the Site C Dam is in their home, the Peace River Valley.
Well, I'm going to add one thing that Riley missed out here. Well, while they do have some troubles with the First Nation group, it is important to remember that the project that they're doing will power around 450,000 homes, or 1.7 million electric vehicles per year in British Columbia once this project is completed and is running.
Do you have proof of that?
Well, that is what the BC Hydro is currently claiming in their project overview. But hey, listen to this. They're becoming so efficient with their technology that Site C will generate about 35% of the energy produced at their previous Bennett Dam, with only 5% of the reservoir. So they're becoming very efficient while using so little amount of water. So things are getting better. I mean, it's looking good. It's
Yeah,
looking
but
great.
you gotta think about it. Where Site C currently is, that place can feed well over 1 million people, as it's like top tier fertile land. And it used to be a burial site as well, because you had to think about the ethical parts, right? West Morebury First Nations chief, I interviewed him a little while ago. He's actually talked about this. I'll insert a clip right here. His name is Roland Wilson.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. It's class 1, class 2 agricultural land in the valley here, and it's the only class 1 and class 2 agricultural land. Just for that fact, they should have protected it, saved it for future generations.
Wow, that is so horrible. I mean, wow, it's my first time hearing about this. Thanks for interviewing him, Riley. Well, this is going to make me sound like a really bad person, but I did agree with the person that I interviewed with, and he's a really interesting person. I interviewed Henry Chang, who is a faculty at the Mechanical Engineering Department at BCIT. He knew about the BC Hydro's hydroelectric dam as an engineer, and he talked a lot about moving forward in the future, about how we need more electricity and how we need more EV vehicles. Therefore, we need this dam.
Do you have a clip of that? I need some proof, you know?
Yes, I do, and here's a clip from Henry Chang.
As far as I know, it's a huge project in northern BC, and because it's we need clean energy in the future forward. We need to have a lot of EV, so we need as much as we can. So,
well, isn't that interesting, Shauna?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, now I want to move on to the main topic. In 2019, West Morebury renewed the lawsuit against Site C, though the project was more than half done. But then again, they still tried to shut it down. But unfortunately, in the end, in 2022, what they got out of it was, oh, we did too much already, we can't back out of it now. Here is what Mr. Wilson has said about it.
Don't build the dam. And Horgan turned around and said, well, we spent too much money, it's too late now, we got to keep going. And they got to argue that in court, but the judges sided with them and didn't side with us on the impact.
I was listening a little bit back on that clip. There was, as part of the interview, he did state that there was other options of obtaining clean electricity. I will also put Mr. Wilson's clip in that as well.
Site C is still not needed. There's other means of acquiring the energy, more effective means of acquiring the energy, cheaper means of acquiring the energy, and the impacts are still too great to the indigenous people of northeastern BC.
Well, Sean, what do you think about that?
Well, he does have a point, but just listen to me for 1 second, okay? So it's not like BC Hydro didn't really consider that as well. They did think about it, and they know that there are other alternative clean resources, such as like thermal generation by using LNG. Like in terms of financially and like the technical difficulty, all that kind of stuff. When they considered all of that aspects, they decided that, well, hydro is really the best way to go. Well, here's the thing, and I'm basing this off from what BC Hydro said, and I quote, "The Site C project provides the best combination for the amount of energy and dependable capacity that Site C can provide if they go through with this instead of using other alternative resources."
The solar, we don't have, it's not a very good place to have solar. And then the winds, and also it's going to be not very suitable in BC here.
Well, just adding on to that point there, well, I know that solar is technically viable in western part of Canada, but it's just that, well, we do have lots of cloudy and dark winters here, and at that point, solar power is not really going to generate much energy at that point. And I heard that they cost up to like what, 1 million just for like a single cell of battery? And that's super expensive, right? And as for wind, oh, don't get me talking about this. Look, there's lots of mountains here in British Columbia, and you can't try to put wind turbines there, but it's going to cause lots of havoc. Like, it's going to cause lots of damage, especially to the rotor blades, because it's mountainous. It's just not a good place to have them. So the only option that we have is really hydro at this point.
Yeah. Well, and solar, I read about it a while ago. Solar panels are like a massive waste. A lot of people say it's like clean, all that stuff. No, it's just as bad as fossil fuels, as they take up a lot of landfill.
I haven't heard of any other side effect apart from Aboriginal people. They have the concern about their ancestors' burial ground. But any project is going to negatively affect some other people.
I also kind of want to talk about when in 2019, West Moberly and 4 other First Nation groups, they went to the UN conference and they presented their the difficulties that the BC government and the Canadian government were putting on them, and like what they were doing to their land. Here's an explanation about that.
We had a sit down with them and explain the situation, and they came out with their statement that Site C was actually a racist project. It was environmentally racist, culturally racist, that it actually went against what the UN put forward, asked British Columbia to stop they were doing. And BC and Canada, they asked them to stop. This isn't just an issue with BC. We have a treaty in place here that's constitutionally protected with Canada.
So the UN actually acknowledged that their rights were violated from Treaty 8, but they really couldn't do anything about it. For those who do not know what Treaty 8 is, it's basically the Canadian government gave a large piece of land spanning 3 provinces, I believe. The First Nation community can exercise their rights. But during the construction of the Site C, BC Hydro and the BC government, they never really consulted, and when they did, it was practically too late. So in this case, their rights were violated heavily in this factor.
The UN said, you guys are in fault, you're wrong, you need to change what you're doing, and UN has no authority over Canada or BC. And they basically just thumbed their nose at the UN and went about that. That's one of the sad things. Nobody can hold Canada in check or any other country in check, and they could have pulled sanctions on them, I guess, and squeezed them that way, but nobody was willing to do that for Indians. We're not important enough for them.
Well, Sean, got any questions, any comments? What are your opinions on this?
Well, to begin with, I know that UN has lots of tasks on their hand. But to be fair, that does not excuse them from just glancing over this issue, saying they have no jurisdiction. Well, what's the point of the UN then? The whole point of United Nations was to do something in these kind of situations. Yeah. Isn't that the whole point?
Yeah, that is kind of the whole point, is to enforce the international law, no?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but in this case, they can't control Canada over anything, as Roland Wilson said in that clip before. The most they could do is just place sanctions on them, which would really do nothing but harm at that point.
Well, but then again, I still like to believe that they should have done something more than just say we can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say as to go as far as to place sanctions. I would maybe try to raise awareness and then try to bring something done. Because usually by starting off by trying to gain awareness, that leads to something, and that something can maybe change into a movement so that, well...
Yeah, well, they already do have a movement before. They did have a movement, I'm sure. And it got to the point where they had to go to the UN. But the UN at that point was kind of pointless. Maybe they could have just threatened Canada,
Yeah, I suppose. I think they should have done that because this story is really just heartbreaking. I knew that the indigenous people were suffering, but I didn't know that they were impacted to this extent. This is very surprising to me. Although I acknowledge how heartbreaking and unfair it is, we cannot change the fact that climate change is imminent. Well, actually, it's already happening, but well, in the long run, Site C will be beneficial to us. BC Hydro claims that it can last for over 100 years. Hundreds of years of clean energy. Think about that. And best of all, the sources of all these energies are relatively free compared to fossil fuels. Free as in they're easily obtainable and less expensive. Think about solar. I mean, you're just relying on the sun to get it. And for the wind turbines, well, you're just relying on the wind, right? And for hydro, you are basically relying on gravity to do the work itself, just relying on nature. So, free as in that kind of free.
If we don't do it in the future, it's just much warmer planets which we cannot accept. So I think in this province, hydro we still need to pursue the hydro, although you have this negative environmental impact.
Well, Sean, this topic has been very interesting and conflictive, but I think we should end it off here. I would like to thank the interviewees Roland Wilson and Henry Chang for taking the time to speak with us. And we would like to thank you too for tuning in this episode of The Crow Chronicles. My name is Riley Lung.
And my name is Sean Park. Please check out and follow our social media handles. It's at BCIT_journalism on Twitter and at BCIT News on Instagram and Facebook. And hear more news from me, follow my SoundCloud at SeanPark9004. That's Sean with SCAN. See you next time, folks.